I experimented with my blood sugars as a type 1 diabetic with a counterintuitive method. Now, what I did actually landed me in some pretty dangerous situations that I am going to go into more detail on later in this episode. But what I want you to understand is that there is a right and a wrong way to experiment with blood sugars, especially if you have type 1 diabetes like me. If you do it the right way, you're virtually guaranteed results. But if you do it the wrong way, it could end up in some pretty sketchy situations. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Matt Van de Vecht. I experiment with my blood sugars continuously. I live with type 1 diabetes. I'm also a certified master fitness trainer and nutritionist. So I have a lot of context going into these experiments and a lot of existing knowledge. And that's why I share it with you, so I can share knowledge gained from perspectives as an expert. Now, what I want to discuss today is the experiments that I've been going through for my Ironman training. If you didn't know, I'm training for my first full distance Ironman, which is 140.6 miles split up into swimming, biking, and running over the course of a single day. It's been difficult, to say the least, but we're going to get into some stories today. I got some really exciting news for you. We'll start with our theme song and then jump straight into it. Last night, my buddy who I'm training for this Ironman for texted me, and he was like, dude, I just found out how to check reports on our watches. So our watches track everything that we do: the swimming, the biking, the running, the stretching, the weightlifting, all of the above. And what's really cool is that he was like, I didn't realize I had done this much. And for both of us, we've never trained for an Ironman before. So the sheer volume of training is absurd. Like last week, he and I did a workout that took us 10 hours. 10 hours. That's a long time to be exercising. It was a bike ride through the entirety of San Diego, and then it was a run up and down, up and down. It was almost a whole marathon, and it's just been exciting but challenging nonetheless. So he messaged me and was like, what are yours? I'm curious. And I was like, I'm curious too. So I pulled him up, and I actually grabbed it today. So this is just from the last 4 weeks. I tried getting the full month, so I'm missing 2 days. I'm a little bit sad about that because it could be even better. Who knows? But the last 4 weeks, I've got 100 miles that I have run. I've got 400 miles that I have biked. And I've got 13,000 yards that I have swam in the last 4 weeks. And I texted him back and I said, that's more in each individual sport than I've done in my entire life summed up, I think. I don't think I've run 100 miles in my life, and yet I run 100 miles in the last 4 weeks. 400 Wait, did I say 4? No, 4 weeks. Yeah, 400 miles biking. I don't think I've ever done a 400-mile bike ride before, or even totaled. So the sheer volume has been wild and an incredible journey, but a lot of blood sugar experiments along the way have been necessary. For example, this was actually a podcast episode last year when I was first getting into half Ironman distances, which is a 70.3 mile race. You can see a couple backpacks back there. I've done 2 half Ironmans now. Getting into that, getting into my first 60 mile bike ride, and that now is a joke. That's like not even a full workout for us anymore. But getting into that, initially, the first 60 mile bike ride that I did with him and his other workout buddies, I needed to consume 400 grams of carbs just to not go low. And for that ride, I'm pretty sure I was like 99% in range. So that's crazy, right? And now I've dialed in my strategies where I don't need 100 grams of carbs per hour, but I actually do want to consume carbs, which is what today's lesson is more about: experimenting with your blood sugars and the difficulty that can arise from that, because experiments don't always go according to plan. You set a hypothesis, if you remember the scientific method, and then you test to see if it's true. You analyze your results and iterate as needed. So now the goal with Ironman is to consume between 60 and 90 carbs per hour while you're on the bike, and about 60 to 70 carbs per hour while running. So getting that magic number dialed in is very difficult with insulin-dependent diabetes. And it all starts with the swim. So an Ironman event starts with a 2.4 mile swim, then straight into a 112 mile bike ride, then straight into a marathon or a 26.2 mile run. On average, this takes people like 12 to 15 hours, okay? And it's probably going to take me closer to the 15-hour marker. But with diabetes, you have to consider blood sugars the entire time, both glucose burn rates from exercise, that's you're burning energy, right? But also the stress you put on your body as time goes on, different digestion rates, different hormones being released. There's a number of things, the types of foods consumed. And what I've had to tweak to find the magic number of has been the fuel leading into my race and the fuel that I continue to consume throughout the race. And then the most difficult part, believe it or not, is the fuel consumed after the race, because insulin sensitivity needs have changed dramatically at that point. Now, the experiment that I recently ran and finally found a solution to is that from the swim to the bike. Now, on the bike, you have to consume an enormous amount of carbs right out of the gates. The difficulty with that is to complete a 2.4 mile swim, I am disconnected from my insulin pump for a very long time, right? Because in the water, I disconnect my pump. That presents a new challenge. So over the last multiple weeks, or maybe even closer to 2 months, I've been experimenting with giving insulin on the bike ride. And if you don't know this yet, let me be the first to share with you, insulin on board plus activity like a bike ride typically results in an urgent low. And I've had this happen many times. It's not fun. So what I've done is experimented in a controlled environment to navigate the chaos. And this is true for any experiment. You don't have to be an Ironman athlete. If you're trying to figure out how to bolus for pizza, same thing, right? That is a tricky one. Actually, I just got off a call with one of our new clients who was like, I just want to learn how to dose for pizza. I was like, cool. We actually have a lesson on that because we've had enough clients ask that specific question that I went in and made an actual training on how to dose insulin for pizza and different kinds of pizza as well. But it's besides the point. Experimenting with blood sugars, you need to give yourself space to assess appropriately. You need to give yourself clean data, right? So if I'm experimenting with giving insulin on a bike ride, I don't want to have existing insulin on board from breakfast. Check. I am not going to have that be part of the equation. I also don't want to have a night where I haven't slept at all, right? Sleep deprivation can lead to different insulin needs. You're more insulin resistant as a byproduct of an increase of cortisol from not sleeping. If I want to experiment with insulin on the bike ride, I need to keep the food consumed the same, right? I need to create space. This has to be a controlled environment. And if it's not, that's fine. I'll still take good notes, but I have to recognize it's not what we call clean data. Now, with my type 1 diabetes clients, I recommend that we follow a set of rules. We have parameters that we set going into an experiment so that we know the data that we collect from our blood sugars is quote unquote clean. So if I were to test an insulin to carb ratio, right? And if you don't know what that is, I need to know how many units of insulin to take for the food that I'm about to consume, right? And the insulin to carb ratio gives us flexibility in how many carbs we consume because more carbs equals more insulin. Less carbs equals less insulin, right? And that's a ratio factor that we have to be able to identify and use in our daily lives. So if I need to figure out what my insulin to carb ratio is, it helps to have clean data, so to speak. In other words, I need to have actually counted my carbs. That's a starting point, right? Number two, I need to know what my blood sugars are before and after the test so I can know if it worked. Number three, I might consider eating around the same time of day so I don't have any other factors at play. Number four, I might consider looking at similar foods for a couple of days. Just make it easy, right? No need to go out to your favorite street taco place on Monday, test your insulin to carb ratio. Oh, I went high. The next day you have a chicken salad with virtually no carbs. Oh, it worked great. Well, which one worked and why? You don't know because the data was muddy, right? So when I was testing for these experiments, the first goal was clean data. Make sure I have a rinse and repeat experiment where all outside variables are consistent or removed. So if I can experiment in isolation I will experience much clearer data that I can then make adjustments to. Now, the big step behind this that I forgot to mention is baby steps, right? I found, and I'm so relieved and happy I get to report this. Like, this is honestly a cause for celebration. I almost get a little bit choked up about this because this was the missing piece from my Ironman race. I did not know that the race would go well unless I had this piece in place. Because if I can't get enough food in during the bike ride, the run, and this is just how physiologically we are, the body will shut down. And I mean, you're essentially skipping breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you have to consume breakfast, lunch, and dinner while exercising. It's a very tricky combination with type 1 diabetes. And it's been a journey and a half, let me tell you that. So my process has been slowly giving little bits more of insulin each time I went out in controlled experiments, controlled environments. Now, life is crazy. Blood sugars are chaotic. The only way to ensure a controlled environment is if you take time to create that space, right? At 7 a.m., I'm going to test giving insulin and going for a bike ride. Okay, in order for that test to go well, I want no insulin on board. I want dinner to have gone well. I want my overnight blood sugars to have been stable so I get quality sleep, right? A lot of things have to be right. So it's a very intentional process to experiment with blood sugars, which is exactly why a lot of people hire me as their coach, because they're like, I know it took you 2 years of obsessively experimenting with blood sugars intentionally and being very hyper-focused and diligent. That sounds hard. I'm like, yeah, it was extremely hard. And I don't recommend it for most people. In fact, I don't think most people could do what I did. And I don't say that from a point of pride. I mean, I was so unhealthily obsessed with blood sugars because I was truly in a do or die mentality. I don't share this often, but when I first discovered blood sugar formulas, it was either, it's hard to talk about this sometimes. It was either figure out how to perfect my blood sugars, or I didn't know if life was worth living anymore because they were just so chaotic and they were ruining every aspect of my life. Social events, peace of mind, sleep. I was ending up in the hospital every other month. It was a hard time. So for me, it was out of desperation that I discovered blood sugar formulas, and they led me to freedom. But discovering them on your own, it's not something that I typically recommend. That being said, now that they're a thing, they're magical. They've given me my freedom back, my flexibility, right? The option to train for an Ironman with type 1 diabetes. Are you kidding me? So forever grateful for that, grateful that I'm still here, and for the massive support my family gave me. We're getting off topic here. I'll get back. I'll bring us back on track. That's a story for another time. Ultimately, looking at how can we experiment safely. So you may not have to go through the full process. My clients get the shortcut to setting up their blood sugar formulas because I oversee the entire process with them. But experimentation is still part of the process for them as well, because you have to experiment to determine what is true for you, since type 1 diabetes is different for all of us. So is type 1.5, MODY, LADA. They're all need to be personalized to our desires, to our needs, our body's responses. And that's where coaching comes into play extra handy, right? Because the coach can say, hey, this isn't going to work for you, switch to this. And then it works. So a big part of my process in isolating these experiments was taking these moments that I created space in where I was able to focus on blood sugars and blood sugars alone with my Ironman training. So I'd say, okay, I'm waking up, this first chunk of my day is dedicated to blood sugar experiments, right? And I started small. This is going to sound a little bit silly to some people, but I started with 0.1 units of insulin, a tenth of a unit. I was like, okay, let's see what happens, right? And I tried to match it up with the right amount of food. It went well. Okay, the next day, 0.2. Okay, let's see how this goes, you know? And then the next day I was like, should I do 0.3 or 0.4? Should I double it or just keep adding 0.1? And I was like, this is taking too long. I need to get the plan in place for Ironman. So I decided I was going to start doubling. Got 0.4, 0.8, and then I was supposed to go to 1.6, and I was like, and I got nervous, and I just gave 1 unit. But still, gave 1 unit and went on a bike ride, and it worked. And just doubling, and then I got into the 1 unit, and I was like, I'm not doubling anymore. So started increasing incrementally, 1.5, 2, and then most recently was a little bit beyond that, and I was like, holy cow. I'm not going to give specific numbers, because I don't want anyone thinking that's what they're supposed to do. It by no means is anything in this episode medical advice, but the process of experimentation, especially when experimenting with highly volatile variables like insulin, sugar, exercise. These are things that when mixed can change in an instant. And I've noticed this as well. There have been times where I missed a window of time with either insulin or food or exercise. If I miss it by like 5 to 10 minutes, completely different outcome. So when experimenting, it's important to know which of these variables are volatile, right? Which ones are more likely to lead into rapid spikes and declines in blood glucose levels? Because if you're unaware of that and not ready, not prepared for it, it can catch you off guard, and it has put me in the hospital before. So experimentation, while it is necessary, is also dangerous, and it's important that you respect that. When we decide not to respect the rules of diabetes, it will quickly remind us that it demands our attention, right? So looking at how do I experiment, first step is creating space. You need to be able to focus on the blood sugars and nothing else. It sounds like a lot, and it's because it is. It's going to require your attention. And this is only for people who want to hold themselves to a higher standard than the current standard of medical care, right? Just got off an enrollment call with one of our new clients, and they were letting me know that their endo had said, hey, an A1C is the end goal. The time and range targets we have set for you are 70%, and that is the end goal. And she kind of chuckled and was like, I heard your stuff, Matt, and you talk about 90%, 100%, A1C in the 5s. And I'm like, yeah, it's because we hold ourselves to a higher standard. And she said, it sounds like it's kind of like a report card, time and range. And I was like, you got it. That's exactly right. 70% isn't the end goal. 70% is a C. That's barely passing, or a C minus, right? We're aiming for A's. So how do you do that? It has to be personalized. How do you personalize it? You experiment. How do you experiment? In isolation. And that's the tricky part, is that it does take time, it takes energy, it takes focus. If you have the ability to hire an expert or a coach to come alongside you and show you the shortcuts, it takes significantly less time. It's a lot safer as well. And for me, I did exactly that. So far in my Ironman journey alone, I've hired 3 different coaches at the same time for different areas of my life, right? For type 1 diabetes, for the physical training aspect, for nutrition, to help me get dialed in with something that I was familiar with, but was not an expert in myself, right? And recognizing that just because you've done something for a long time, it does not make you an expert. I've been an athlete my entire life, but Ironman is new to me. And I have some people who talk to me too. They're like, oh, I've had type 1 diabetes for 50 years. I think I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, then why are you asking to get new ideas? Why aren't you at 100% time and range? Why isn't your A1C in the 4s? If time were the distinction of being an expert, 50 years should be plenty of time, right? And it's because there's no learning of new things. We learn just enough to survive and then repeat the lessons learned forever, thinking that's as good as it gets. But unless you have someone on the outside looking in to give you a new perspective, you're going to be locked in that good enough phase for a very long time. Now, what's interesting about the experimentation is that I finally did find the balancing point of how much insulin I needed to consume the carbs that I needed to eat, and the timing of that insulin being very different than a typical pre-bolus, because I am doing inducing, whatever. I'm giving it during exercise. And so a lot of the variables, the amounts, the timelines, they're all changing. But the best way that I've found to do that is small, consistent progress through experimentation in a controlled environment. So if you are going to experiment, let's say you want to figure out how to dose for pizza. Very popular desire, very uncommon to have a master plan for it, which is why we teach that in our programs. The first step, consistency with the pizza, right? If you're switching the pizza type, it's going to be insanely difficult to figure it out because you don't know what the differences between pizzas were. You don't know the ingredients list. You probably don't know the macronutrient quality of carbs, fats, proteins, the percentages between them. So even if you were completely ignorant of those variables, like how many what's the percentage difference between carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, which is helpful to know. But even if you were completely ignorant of that, just eating the same pizza each time for each experiment would grant you access to results, to clean sets of data, right? Second step is to gather the data that you have and iterate with that, to make adjustments, right? In my experiments, I had to figure out what to eat before my swim, what to eat after the swim, leading into the bike, and then how much insulin to give for that, right? I have missing basal insulin, I'm adding carbs, there's the stress of the race, there's a number of things I have to consider with how much insulin to give. I've had a few experiment results that didn't go well. I was gonna say, I will leave it at that. I'll tell you guys, I'll open up to you. I had a few urgent lows, and they were not fun. To come out of the water, a little confused, right? A little shaky, and realize that if I had stayed in the water for even 10 more minutes, I might have passed out and drowned, right? That's a scary thing to consider. Popping out of the water and being in the 50s, you're like, well, I was in the water for an hour. That could have gone really badly. I've also come out of the water significantly higher. 200s, right? And that's not fun either. So it's been a process, and you have to give yourself grace when you're experimenting. I would say that's probably step number 2. Set up a consistent experiment you can run, give yourself grace with the initial data sets, and then step 3 is to iterate or adapt from the information you've gathered in order to make consistent progress. Now, the key with experimentation and diabetes is to be aware of the outside variables. And this is a bonus step, right? Where you have to be able to identify the root cause of why blood sugars are doing what they're doing. And I'll give you guys a little added golden nugget. Every blood sugar that you see or experience is there for a reason. A lot of people think, oh, blood sugar is just crazy. They just happen. And then that's how it is. That's not true. Every single blood sugar you've ever experienced existed for a reason. Either you did something, or your body did something, or something outside happened in. But blood sugars all have a root cause. And the more of those root causes you're able to determine, the cleaner and clearer the data gets as well. So if I'm high and I don't know why I'm high, I could take more insulin to fix that. But if I don't know why the high happened in the first place, that high will continue to happen until I figure out what went wrong in the first place, right? So it's really helpful to be able to assign proper meaning, to find the root cause of any mishaps that you might have while experimenting. So in this process, happy to say I did find a solution. I was able to go through my entire workout, and I identified that, but it took me many processes, many different tries and iterations. It probably took 2 months of testing multiple times a week, and with every week having one big test, a full run through of the entire plan that I thought would work, and it just continually didn't work. You have to be stubborn to a certain degree to continue testing in the face of adversity, but also recognizing it's okay to ask for help. I had to call in a number of favors, and creating a safe environment to experiment in is critical, because with diabetes, we're playing with some pretty volatile medication, right? Insulin, it's a tricky thing. It saves us, right? It's what keeps us alive, but it can also kill us in an instant. And that's very, very scary reality that we live with. It's good and bad for us at the same time. And so what I did, I actually called in favors once a week. And my parents are fantastic Really just the best. I know I'm biased, but I feel like I'm not. They're the best. So my parents, I'd call them up and say, hey, I'd say, my mom, can you watch my daughter, right? Because I have my daughter on Fridays. I'm solo parenting. My wife works a couple days a week as well. So I'm like, hey, can you watch Brooklyn? And then Dad, can you hang out with me while I do some aggressive experimentation? And that allowed me to make a lot faster progress, because when I had them once a week, I knew with my dad, hey, I'm going to give a ton of insulin. We're going to see how this goes. And he's like, okay, are you going to be safe? And I'm like, I hope so. So, being able to call on people that allow you to either make more aggressive decisions in a safe environment where it's a controlled chaos, right? Like, what I was doing was chaotic. It was, in my head, seemed insane. It was counterintuitive. But I knew that there had to be a way forward through that, and I had to figure it out. So having someone I could call on to give me the space, that controlled chaos environment to experiment aggressively, was key to making faster progress. But 2, hiring coaches who've done this stuff before, who are very knowledgeable in this area, that allowed me to make shortcuts, discover things that would have probably taken me another year or 2 through consistent experimentation. I would have probably gone mad trying to figure it out. Those are the 2 shortcuts that I want to give you today. So 1, if you have a supportive spouse, sibling, parent, friend, whoever it is that you can call on, and it doesn't have to be just for experimentation. It can be just for plain old support, saying, hey, having a hard time. Let's go to lunch and distract me, right? Or I also have, my wife follows me on Dexcom Share, right? Or Follow, or whatever it's called, to make sure I'm okay when I am out experimenting, because I can't always see my blood sugars, and I'll get a phone call. Hey, Matt, you're dropping rapidly. And I can take that phone call on my earbud while I'm cycling or running. And I'm like, oh, shoot, you're right. Quick, juice, right? Or actually dextrose and maltodextrin. Now, 2, if you are looking for a coach or an expert to show you the shorter cuts, the faster ways to get to the end results that you're looking for, that's the best life hack that I've found. Like I said, I hired 3 different coaches. They were very expensive, but not only did they give me a safe route and virtually guaranteed progress through the trainings that I've been doing, but it gave me peace of mind knowing that I was on the right path, doing the right thing, that I was going to be able to achieve something that few people do, just like getting to 90% or 100% time in range, right? And if you're new here, I've been able to maintain an above 90% time in range report for my average for the past 5.5 years, while training for Ironman, raising a family, running a business, eating fun foods. I don't stop. I don't hold back. And it's because of blood sugar formulas that I'm able to do that. So if blood sugar formulas sound like something that you think would be beneficial for you, typically it's more for the high performers, right? People who refuse to settle for less, where 70% or 7A1C or restrictive diets, or don't have too much fun because diabetes. If that sounds like a load of BS and you're looking for more out of life with type 1 diabetes, where you can mix happy and healthy to have controlled blood sugars, but not because of restriction, but because they're actually controlled and enable you to live with more freedom and flexibility with food and activity and family and actually enjoying life, blood sugar formulas might be the way to go. So we put it together a free training where you can check it out, learn a bit more about blood sugar formulas, and see if it's something that matches with the lifestyle that you're after right now, that enables you to have more fun, feel more normal, right? So you can get that free training access at diabetesinaction.com. You go through, watch that, take some notes, because there's some golden nuggets I think you'll pull out of that and find helpful. And at the end of it, if you want some help trying to figure out how to apply that to your life, there's an option to obviously hop on a chat with my team. That's free too, and we'll see if we can get you some resources and line you up with the path that's best for you. All right, so diabetesinaction.com. Don't delay, don't procrastinate and put this off. That sounds great, I'll do it tomorrow. Do it right now. You're gonna find something else that distracts you, and you're gonna suffer for longer than you need to. Nobody wants that. So diabetesinaction.com. We'll see you guys over there. Hope you enjoyed this one. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Love seeing from you guys, and we'll catch you guys next week. Keep up the fight.